What's going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and we're going to be going over UFC Vancouver from a DFS perspective. I hope to be able to do a lineup construction video tomorrow morning. I think I will have time to do it, but for now, I'm going to go over the card, and I don't know, maybe I'll throw a couple of betting takes in there as well. Again, that's not my main edge, but we'll see if anything hits me as I go through this. Okay, so first, let's take a look at the character of the card here. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 13 fights on the card, and that's usually a very, very good amount for, a really good GPP card. You're not going to have to get too crazy to put yourself in a position to win a lot of money with 13 fights. In addition to that, the main event, while it is a it's a strong fight. I'm not sure you have to 100% lock it in, which means that it's even a better GPP card because usually when you have 5 round fights that are really chalky, because they usually are, and they're chalky for a really good reason, it ends up being a contest for how well you can try to get unique, and you end up having to, you know, play all kinds of crazy combinations and leave all kinds of salary and that's certainly fun, and that is a certain skill set that we're all trying to develop. But from a in a general sense, a nice 13 fight card is pretty reasonable. Now, with that said, you still are going to have to look for upside in all of these fights. I mean, you can't just go for 6 winners. That's not going to be good enough, even with underdogs. On the other hand, as we go through this, you will see that not that many of these fights are kind of locks to get there. I mean, I do think that overall, this rates to be a pretty low scoring slate. So, in that sense, if you get an underdog home, it might not require you to get that, 100-point underdog score. Um, so that's like the overall view. It's a good GPP card. 13 fights usually requires an incredible amount of upside, even with, a 5 round fight that you don't really 100% have to play. But as we go through these fights, you'll see that there are only maybe 3 or 4 fights that rate to really be smash spots. So I do think it's going to be rather low scoring. With that said, let's get right to it. And the first fight of the night, you have Melissa Croden versus Tamara Lisboa. And right off the bat, we have a sneaky little line move, which is going to be very interesting. So you have Lisboa is 8,400 and Croden is 7,800, yet the line has moved such that Croden is the favorite. So you have a decent amount of line value. I mean, I would say actually an almost elite amount of line value on Melissa Croden. And normally when that happens, a fighter like this will get steamed in DFS and become extraordinarily popular, where then you go try to, leverage against that fighter by going for the fighter with the money line disadvantage. But for this fight, I don't think that she's going to get that much ownership because it's number one, a women's fight, which people hate. Number two, it's the first fight of the night, which people hate. They don't like to commit too much exposure to the first fight of the night. And the other thing is that when you look at the inside the distance lines here, you have Croden inside the distance at plus 300, which you definitely, you don't usually want to play at 8,400. Okay. Um, so this fight, where it otherwise could be pretty popular, on this particular card, I don't think it will be. And as a result, I think this is one you really just can get after right away. Um, First of all, the Croden side, you have enough line value, which makes it playable. You have enough ownership fade that makes it playable. When I say ownership fade, I don't mean she's not going to be popular, that she's going to be unowned, but relative to what someone with that money line advantage could get, I think she's going to get less owned. And in addition to that, I mean, from what I've researched about this fight, this thing could deliver. I mean, you have two fighters who really don't give an F. You know, they're going to come out there, and I think they're going to really kind of sling it. They're not the only ones that, we're not the only ones that realize first fight of the night. They show up in Vancouver, in Canada, and there's going to be nine people there to start off. And I think they're going to have a little chip on their shoulder and just kind of get after it. So, uh, right out of the gate, I think Crode's a very, very good play. And as a matter of fact, I mean, if you really want to get spicy, you could play the Lisboa side also, you know. Again, I think that there's more upside to this fight, maybe even than the line indicates. And if you do get some kind of Croden steam, then the natural thing you want to do in that situation is play the other side. So this is a very, very sneaky fight, I think, in DFS, and I'm going to be significantly over the field on it. Now, I don't, have the ownerships settled in right now, but I can't imagine that. I mean, what's Croden going to be? I mean, even if people play this money line stuff, she can't be over 25%, right? Or can she? I'm not sure, but I do think that this fight is very sneaky, and I'm going to get significant exposure to this kind of right off the bat. Okay, next fight on the card. This one is not going to be unowned. This one is going to be pounded. And that you have Azamat Bakoev versus Yusri Belagroy, and you look at the inside the distance line here. You have Bakoev is I think minus 110. Um, yeah, not he's minus 110, but not only that, I mean, he's got a good amount of takedown upside too. So at 9,100, that's extraordinarily reasonable. So reasonable price. So I think that he's probably going to be the highest owned fighter on the board. Uh, that's not in the main event. I do think that DeRitter is going to be the highest owned, just because it's 8,800, 5 rounds, all that stuff. But I think that Bakoev has got to be second, right? So what that means is a couple of things. Number one, obviously good play, great play. I mean, in cash or whatever. I mean, I'll go over that actually. So in cash, I mean, like, or in low risk stuff, like this is the way you're probably supposed to start something like this, or Allen, like Bakoev and Ritter or Allen. But in GPPs, I mean, you really do want to consider the other side of this because of how popular Bakoev is going to be. So we could look into Belagroy just a little bit. Like, there's nothing on the board here, but we could look at his fight history here at least, and his metrics, and he's got an inside the distance line of what, like plus 400, plus 350. I mean, first of all, that's not bad right off the bat. But even if the the inside the distance line wasn't so great, I mean, he's going to win the fight. What, 20% of the time, 22% of the time, and if you can get that leverage against what's going to be probably the most popular fighter that's not in the main event to work. I think it's someone you really have to target in GPPs. Um, he's 8-3. Let's look at some of these results. I mean, I don't. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, the fact is that he is only a 3-1 underdog, which means he's going to win the fight about 25% of the time. And as a result, when his opponent is the most popular non-5 round fight on the slate, I think you have to play it. So I think both sides of this fight as well. So right out of the gate, just bam, bam. You know what I mean? You could be out of business pretty quickly, but you could also be in business really quickly. Like if you get like God forbid, like a Lisboa Belagroy combination home, which is totally reasonable to play. I mean, you have all kinds of business. You know what I mean? So I really like doing that. I think I want to play all four prongs of those first two fights. Some Bakoev Grodin, Bakoev Lisboa, Belagroy Cohen, Belagroy Lisboa, and just hope they deliver. On the other hand, um, This Luciano play, I can't imagine playing a cent of this. I mean, first of all, let's look at the price. I mean, she's 9,300, and first of all, her money line isn't even that great for that price. Not to mention the lack of any finishing upside in her metrics. You know, you have Luciano inside of plus 400. I mean, there's just no way that I'm going to get to any of this. And I will say also that even if I don't, what do they say, exit out manually, can't imagine getting any of this. Like, what kind of sim will get me any of either of these fighters, even if they're going to be, 10% owned. It's just the metrics are way too poor as far as I'm concerned. All right, Drew Dober versus Kyle Prepolek. I will say right now that it's becoming the pretty trendo thing to do right now within the betting community to bet Propolek here. Um, whenever something like that happens, it's something I almost want to fade. So if you want a kind of a funny play that you can make, I mean, I'll probably bet this actually. My betting recommendation is this. I'm going to say Dober by decision at probably very, very huge odds is worth value. So let's just take a look just for fun. Let's see. Dober by decision. Boy, it's only plus 230. I'm very surprised by that. I thought it'd be much higher, but you know what? I guess that's so crazy it just might work. Um, Dober inside the distance minus 125. It certainly makes sense. His price is, you know, reasonable for his metrics, and he could get a first round knockout, which is on this card very valuable. So I definitely think that he is in play. I think he's a very, very strong favorite. And yes, his chin might be gone. And yes, Prepolek might get lucky, but I don't know about this. He lost to Austin Hubbard, Christ's sake. You know what I mean? Like I can't imagine. Not that I can't imagine. Let's forget what I can imagine. Let's look at the odds. I mean, he's a 4-1 underdog, which means he's going to get there 20% of the time. Is 20% Propolek? If he wins 20% of the time, is that good enough to put him in the optimal or to play him? Well, I think that if he does win, he is going to be in the optimal, right? Because I guess he's probably going to get a knockout. Let's take a look at these metrics, by the way. So Propolek inside, I mean, plus 1,000. Yikes. Yeah, okay, sure. I'll play some of it. So I will say Dober, yes. Not as good of a play, I don't believe, as Bakoev, but very, very strong. And I suppose Prepolek as some kind of leverage. I think Dober is going to be popular. I mean, 9,400 is not that unreasonable for him. So you could play Prepolek as some leverage. I think that this is a little bit weaker than the Bakoev Belagroy spot. But it's the same concept. So yep, let's try that also. Danny Barlow versus Jordan Santos. So Barlow's coming off kind of a lemon here. But let's just forget about that and take a look at the numbers. Barlow inside is he minus 110? Yeah, he sure is. So he's got to be playable, right? He looks very, very similar to what's his name? To Dober's actually. The only thing I would say is that I think given the styles of all three of these favorites, they all look good as far as inside the distance. Problem is that Barlow is completely striking based. Bakoev can go for all kinds of takedowns and score 130 or whatever. And even Dober has some takedowns that he could involve himself with if need be. So I think that Barlow is the worst of these three big favorites. I mean, In 150, you have to play it just because of that inside the distance line. But aside from that, I don't think that, I don't think he rates as high as Bakov or Dober as far as DFS spots. What about this Santos character? I mean, I don't know. He's plus 300. Again, he wins the fight 20% of the time. Inside the distance, it's pretty similar to these others that we talked about. So I mean, there's not here's the difference. I don't think Barlow's going to be particularly popular. So because Barlow's not going to be that popular, you're not getting the same amount of leverage playing Santos as those other two that we discussed. So, and I guess this is an important exercise. So ranking these things as we go, Belagroy, I think, is the best of these underdogs because Bakov is going to be more popular. Prepelec is probably next best because Dober is going to be next popular, and Santos is going to be third because Barlow's going to be third most popular. I think that's the way you look at this. Um, okay, Bruno Silva versus Park, and Park, we remember him from having to step when he stepped in against Toshiro Taira, and people played him. People thought it was going to be competitive, and boy, was it not. I mean, he just got dusted. Um, but now, it's a little bit of a, it's not Toshiro Taira, but Bruno Silva's no joke either. I mean, he's been around the block, and he's gotten into some wars with some really, really tough fighters. So I think that this fight can really deliver here. I mean, look at the inside the distance line. So weird inside the distance line. It's only pick 'em to inside, but Park is very plus 160 inside. That's not bad. Silva inside, not really that great at plus 400. Let's look at the prices here. And Park is 9K. So I think I see where we're headed here, right? I mean, you have very similar type ideas here. You have really good favorite and leverage underdog. Really good favorite, sort of leverage underdog. Not as good of a favorite, but okay. And then a little bit worse of an underdog, leverage. So where does Park fit into all of this? Okay. I guess, see, again, we don't really care too much about the Silva piece because all we're playing these guys are as leverage against these decent favorites. Silva himself, his inside the distance line isn't great. His money line isn't that terrific. So we're playing him just as a function of how owned Park is going to be or how good of a play Park is going to look. And Park is going to look, I think these are getting pretty efficient. You know what I mean? Like, I think Park has less of an inside the distance line. Um, but he's got some takedowns. So, um, how do we rate these? Like, how do you rate Park versus Barlow? I guess you have to put Park better than Barlow because of the additional takedowns, even though his inside the distance line isn't quite as good. I also know we're definitely going to get like a pace out of this fight. I'm not so sure that the Barlow Santos fight doesn't just kind of, stay on the feet, a little more cautious or whatever. Santos doesn't want to get, hand of godded, whatever. But so I think that the Park Silva fight comes up above the Barlow Santos fight. And once again, I think in 150 you want to play both of these guys. Um, but I think to a higher degree than the Barlow Santos fight. Okay, you have Jourdain, Davy Grant. I think this is one we could probably take off from DFS. Let's take a look. So Jourdain at 8,700. We'll look at his inside the distance line. His inside the distance line now we're probably going to not be good enough. Yeah, so Jourdain inside now we're down to plus 300 inside. So at his price, no good. Grant himself inside the distance is not good at all. His money line is not great either, right? We'll take a look. I mean, if anything, yeah, I guess that Davy Grant does have some money line value because he's plus 150 on the board and his price is 7,500. So I guess that's okay. Um, but given that the other underdogs we talked about already, the leverage they have over these others, I don't think I'm going to get to the Grant, and I don't think I'm going to get to Jourdain either. We're going to get some good mid-range fights that we're going to get to instead. So I think Jourdain Grant is goes on the fade list, honestly. On the other hand, Frivola Nelson, this is just Jam City. You have super pricing, 8,300, 7,900. And as with most Frivola fights, they just always seem to get there. You look at the inside the distance line here, and I think both of them are going to be like under plus 200. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, Nelson inside about plus 180, Frivola inside about plus 180. They're all about the same. And at these prices, this fight just has to be jammed. Like if you're going to play again that cash game build that I talked about or that I started to talk about, I mean, you got to play one of these two cats. Okay. Whether it be Frivola or Nelson. And we're going to get to the other fight that's very similar to this one. Um, so you're going to want to play Bakoev. You're going to want to play somebody from the Ritter fight. You're going to want to play somebody from the Frivola fight. I don't even know which one to play. It doesn't even make a difference. They're both the same. You know, the only thing I would say is that maybe Frivola is a little better because he has wrestling as well. So that if the fight for whatever reason doesn't finish or finish early, he could still get there in a decision a lot easier than Nelson could. I think. But again, I wouldn't undersell the Nelson part of this, So I don't even want to get into this. I'm going to say that for Vo and Nelson are equal, and you should probably play one of them in most all of your lineups. Okay, Cody Gibson versus Jethro Tull, 8,600 versus 7,600 for Cody Gibson. And the real deal here is Cody Gibson, despite him having, not a great inside the distance line, what he does have is a lot of wrestling upside. Okay, first we'll look at the inside the distance line, and plus obviously plus 300 is no good at 8,600. But if you look at his record, he has 5 takedowns, 2 takedowns here, you know, and he did get a takedown against Blackshear before he got subbed or whatever. But got a takedown over here as well, 4 takedowns. So he has that's back 2014. So he does have this in him. And Aqualung does not have the greatest takedown defense in the world. Now, from what I've heard, it's improved. I mean, he took Rosas right to a decision, as an enormous underdog here. And Rosas is very, very strong grappler. So maybe he's been working on it. Um, and I don't know, Gibson, 37 years old. I don't know if he's really gonna be able to get this done here. So I don't know. I think that Gibson, I think it's either, wait, is it Gibson or pass? Is it possible to play Aqualung here? Or is he just sitting like a dead duck? I don't know. We're gonna see. Um, let's take a look at the inside the distance lines here. Aqualung inside plus 320. No, but this one's like plus 400, so not really. And I don't know how popular Gibson's really going to be. So in 150, I might get some of the Aqualung. Um, Certainly not a priority. And I listen. I don't think the Gibson one is necessary. I mean, really. Um, I think that Aqualung is improving. I mean, he's improving. Whatever. He's at least still in his prime, I guess. Cody Gibbs is 37. I'm sure he's gonna probably go for some takedowns, but I don't know. I just feel as though Aquilung's a little bit more motivated to have worked on the takedown defense, and at best, Cody Gibson wins. I don't know, 90 points or something. So that's pretty much it. Probably close to a fade, maybe sprinkles. That's about it. Okay, Menon Fiorot versus Jasmine Jasdavicius. I mean, this is DFS 101. I mean, honestly. Um, you have Jasmine Jasdavicius, who's a plus 200 underdog, which means she wins the fight 33% of the time. But when she wins, she's going to be optimal, I would say, 100% of the time. Because the only way she's going to win is if she gets her wrestling going and gets her takedowns. And if she get and probably she's going to require a lot of them and or a finish and or a lot of control time because otherwise if this fight stays on the feet, it's no contest. Fiorello's just going to piece her up and win kind of an easy decision. So the point is that those 33% of the times that Jasmine wins, she's just going to smash. So you've got to play a ton of Jasmine here. The only thing that's getting in the way is that Fiorello is probably not going to be very popular because again, her for a $9,200 fighter, her inside the distance line is what she plus 500 or something. So she's by her metrics not playable. I mean, as a matter of fact, I mean the real thing you're supposed to do is play some Fiorello because I mean is I was about to say Jasmine's going to be really popular. I mean, isn't she going to be? How is she not? I mean, I guess she doesn't have to be because if you play the two mid-range fights and the main and one of these favorites, I mean, you don't even really need to play too much Jasmine, or do you? I'm just afraid that the Jasmine play is going to be too chalky. I mean, it's such an easy, logical, honestly, DFS 101 play that you just have to do it. So I mean, here, like in GPPs, I mean, I can't imagine not doing this. Really. Now, again, it may seem weird to do this because well, she's only going to win like 33% of the time. It doesn't matter. Like when she wins, she's really good. And she might actually get like 40 points in a loss. She gets a couple of takedowns. So just want to just do something for a second. Let's say you don't play Jasmine. We're going to get to these in a minute, but let's just say you did something like Holland, Nelson, and Bakoev. I mean, you don't really have to play a big underdog here, I don't think. I mean, you have to play some kind of underdog, though. That's the problem. Are people going to do this? Yeah, they're probably going to do this. Like Croden, and then what? Then what? What else, though? Yeah, I mean, like, I'd be curious to hear what people's ownership projections are here for Jasmine, because as far as I'm concerned, she's so much the best as far as underdogs go, with the exception of maybe Brendan Allen, but not even. Because Brendan Allen and his wins doesn't necessarily score more than 80 points here. Where I can't imagine Jasmine, even though it's 3 rounds, not scoring 30 points. Um, 100 points. Koev, Allen, Jasdavicius. I mean, like I think this is what you have to do. What can I tell you? And it's kind of weird to say, right? Because 67% of the time you're gonna be wrong. But when you're right, it just works well, just too well. And that's especially in GPPs what it is all about. Okay. Marlon Vera versus Iman Zahabi. As usual, Marlon Vera fights are just not playable from a DFS perspective for two reasons. One, they usually play out on the feet, and two, he usually takes the first round off and usually wins, usually does better in later rounds, which is not good for DFS for anybody. So unless a hobby is like has extreme metrics here, which oh my god, he does not. I mean, this fight's a shit show. Okay, from a DFS perspective, I think it's either Vera or pass. Vera inside at plus 340. What's his? I mean, that's not even that great. So yeah, fight's probably just a pass. Okay, Mike Malott versus Kevin Holland. This is the other fight, which has very, very strong inside the distance props, and the pricing is very, very strong. We'll take a look. Holland inside plus 200, Malott inside plus 200, $8,100 fight. It's not as good um, as the Nelson fight, though. I mean, you look at the inside the distance lines there, you have both fighters at, well, it's the same, right? Nelson plus 190, Frivola plus 190, as opposed to this one, which are, let's remind ourselves, again, 190, 190. I mean, it's the same. I mean, it's the same fight. I mean, really. So same result. I mean, same advice. You play both sides of this, and it should get there. I hope it gets there. That's it. Now again, I listen, you can make a case that Holland kind of screws around and sometimes, fights a boring fight. And Malott tends to gas a little bit. So I think of those two fights, I think that the common wisdom is going to be that the Frivola fight is more likely to deliver. But what that's going to mean is that that fight's probably going to be higher owned. And according to the metrics, there's no difference. So I'll just put this right on the same plane as the Frivola fight. So you want to play both sides of this. Now I've kind of alluded to the main several times, but 5 rounds of possible grappling. It's a lot of points. It really is. And DeRitter at sub 9K, given that, is just a very, very strong play. It is. Is it a lock? No, but it's definitely a strong play. And then for all the reasons we discussed with these other dudes, Allen at 7,400 in all of his wins. Okay, will he score a ton in all of his wins? No. Okay, but he will score a ton in a good amount of his wins, and he will always be taking out 50% of the lineups when he does so because Ritter is going to be 50%. He just is. I mean, he's a strong play. So all of Allen's wins, I think, are going to be worth it. So um, again, it's not a lock, but it's certainly a priority. So let's review. Sneaky right off the bat, Lisboa Cronin. Okay, so we have 3 mid-range fights to target. Lisboa Cronin, that's going to be the low owned piece. For Volman Nelson, Malad Holland. Okay, those, and not in that order. Right? Obviously, the Cronin Lisboa fight is least important. It's going to be the least owned too, so you don't have to get as much of it. And then you have these fights for, first of all, the fade fights like Luciano fade. Think Jourdain Grant fade, Gibson probably a fade, and Vera probably a fade. Okay, and then the Ritter is, again, it's kind of a hybrid between the mid-range fights and the favorites with good leverage fights, which include, remember, Bakoev with Belagroy. You have Dober with Propolek. To a lesser degree, Barlow and Santos, and then you also have Park with Silva. Um, and again, I think it is a good card for GPPs because I'm not exactly sure which of those favorites I'm going to want to play or which of those underdogs I'm going to want to play. So I think playing GPPs with multiple lineups kind of solves that. And you'll end up, getting different from, listen, I think that some of these guys are paying the rake. Like some of these fights we're fading could easily be paying the rake. And, then you get a bunch of combinations with the fights you like and then kind of let it roll. Now there's lineup construction stuff you could do, like with all these mid-range fights, depending on how these guys project, you could take Frivola lineups and then take 400 off and get them into Nelson lineups. Okay, that's certainly reasonable. And same thing with with the Allen Malott fight. Excuse me, with Allen Malott, with Malott Holland. You could take the Malott lineups and take 200 off. And excuse me, and take the Malott lineups and swap them with Holland and save the 200 because projections are going to probably tell the optimizers to put them on those lineups on Malott. Where if you artificially say, you know what, I'm just going to take Holland, it gets you just a little more different. And it's not so much leaving on the table that you risk stuff like getting. Well, here's the thing you have to worry about when you do stuff like that is if you do that, like a play like Gibson, okay, like if you had Gibson at 8,600, you would definitely would rather play like Park or Dober, or any of those guys, Park or Barlow or whatever, as opposed to Gibson. Um, so if you then afford yourself an extra 400 by leaving one of those mid-range guys on the table, you probably should use that 400 to get up to those favorites as opposed to leaving the 400 on the table. So one way to do that is to make sure that if you're going to leave money on the table, that you're only leaving that money on the table that wouldn't have gotten you from a bad play to an elite play. Okay. And this is actually a pretty useful barometer. So Gibson at 86. Like, is it that bad to have Gibson as opposed to, say, Park? If you could live with Gibson over Park, then you can leave the 400 on the table. Maybe you can. So that is probably a good idea. You build your lineups in general, just boom, right? And then you say, you know what? This is what you do. Maybe if this is in case I don't do the lineup construction video. You say, all right, here, search for my Malott lineups, for example, and then say, you know what? Boop, put Holland in. Okay. Now you still need Malott lineups. So what you want to make sure then you do is you then only use the Malott lineups that rate to be to be low owned, okay, or rate to be low duped, and we'll talk about that in lineup construction. And then the ones you play with Holland, you don't care because you're already getting a little bit better ownership because you're giving that 200 back. Um, the other thing you could do in a situation like that is if you want to reduce risk a little bit, is is take those Malott lineups and then duplicate them, like make them twice, and then swap half of them to Holland. So you have the same lineup with Malott and Holland. Okay, and similarly with the Frivola thing, same thing, but except 400. So you take the Frivola lineups and say, okay, take 400 off the table by swapping to Nelson, but then also with the Frivola lineups, make sure that the ones you leave are either duplicates of the Nelson lineups or make sure that they're going to be particularly low duped. And we'll go through how to do that when we do lineup construction in our next video. And that's going to do it. Good luck, everybody. Hello. Good. What's going on? Good.